welcome to another episode of A Mirror Darkly. Today's episode is Life, the Universe, and Everything.
Okay, so this won't be very short then. It should be very long since it covers everything.
Yes.
So, well, I want to give a couple of shout outs. First of all, you'll notice it's just the two of us. Our daughter decided to stay home this week. Also, I look a little tired and old because I didn't have time to do my hair or put on makeup. So this is what you get. This is what I look like in the morning, except my hair's like, just kidding. I'm still on summer break, so the whole hair and makeup thing hasn't been happening every single day. I want to give a couple shout outs. We are already being joined by our friend Cindy. So hi, Cindy. And also I found out last week that our friend Phil Howe, he kind of pops in and out and checks us out. He's busy doing stuff at this time on Saturday, so he doesn't have a chance to participate, although he says he'd like to. So if Phil's popping in and out today, I want to give him a shout out, and maybe he can take a second and participate a little bit. But if not, that's okay too. So anyway, you know, something you can do if this is a podcast or webcast that interests you, you can do a watch party, which is how I invite people. If you click on share, and then click on watch party, and then you can invite friends or just do a watch party, and they'll see it when they get on, and then they'll watch too. So it's one way to share the webcast with your friends. So anyway, so why don't you get us started, and I'll wait until you say something. I go, oh, I have something to contribute.
Okay, well, 1979, Douglas Adams did.
Hold on, and before we continue,
Yes.
If you have something to contribute, just type it into the comment part, and I will read it on the air. So, okay, go ahead while I drink my coffee.
Yes, 1979, Douglas Adams, author of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Good book, recommended if you haven't read it, and actually read the sequels as well. I think there's about 5 or 6 books in the series altogether.
If you watch the movie, you have to read the books first, or it won't make sense.
Yeah, the movie's not bad, but yeah, it helps if you've read the.
It skips a lot.
Yes.
Of stuff that's in the books that you need. Well, yeah, because it's a difference in media. But normally I don't compare the book and the movie. But I'm just warning you, the movie won't make sense if you haven't read the books, because you have to kind of fill in the blanks yourself.
Although it's not as bad as trying to watch Dune without having read the books.
I'm not going to read Dune, and I am not planning on watching the movie. So problem solved.
Okay. Books are quite good. Anyway, Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. In it, he tells the story of a group of hyper-intelligent pan-dimensional beings who demand to learn the ultimate answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. And they inquire of a computer called Deep Thought, which was specially built for the purpose of answering this question. And Deep Thought says, well, spend the next 7.5 million years contemplating the question, and I'll give you an answer in 7.5 million years. Much longer than they anticipated, but fine, whatever.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch.
Yes, so life goes on, and after 7.5 million years, everybody comes together, big party, celebrations, massive number of people standing there waiting to see what Deep Thought is going to say, what the answer is going to be. And so they go to Deep Thought and say, oh, Deep Thought, please give us the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. And Deep Thought goes, I don't think you're going to like the answer. And they said, doesn't matter, tell us the answer, it's fine, give us the answer. Okay, but you're not going to like it. Answer is 42. And you're right, we don't like it. And then Deep Thought goes on and says that the problem is that you haven't asked the right question. That is, the ultimate question is what's unknown. And so what you're going to have to do is find out the ultimate question first. And so then they have Deep Thought, ask Deep Thought if they can do it, and says, no, I'm not powerful enough. You'll have to build another computer to do that. And so they built the Earth, which then is trying to find out the ultimate question. Unfortunately, the Earth was destroyed by whatchamacallits when they made a Hyperloop bypass.
What are whatchamacallits?
I'm trying to remember what the Vogons.
Oh, okay.
Vogons made a Hyperloop Hyperloop bypass through the earth and destroyed it, and so that messed up the questions. They had to rebuild the earth. If you watch the movie, you'll see all of that.
It's hot in here. Not as hot. Well, no, I'd venture a guess it's probably as hot as that little booth we were in back in the day.
You think so?
Yeah, this is
I
hot.
don't think it's that hot.
I'm hot. Of course, I'm drinking coffee, which doesn't help, but there wasn't anything cold in the fridge.
There's Dr. Pepper in there.
I don't drink Dr.
And
Pepper.
Dr. Thunder, the knockoff
And I
brand.
don't drink the knockoff brand either.
Oh, well, there
I'm
you
a
go.
brand name girl, and Dr. Pepper is not one of my brands that I drink.
Okay.
Hmm?
So, the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, essentially it's the question of, what is the purpose of existence? Why are we here? That's the question that people ask, particularly sophomores in college after they've been drinking too much late at night. Somebody once answered that, what is the purpose of life? It's air, because you use air to fill up various balls, footballs, basketballs, soccer balls, and sport is the answer to life. Of course, that ties in then to the joke that I like to tell about it, which is, what is Jackie Robinson's jersey number?
42.
Yes, it is 42.
But baseballs are not filled with air.
Yeah, but what team did Jackie Robinson play for?
The Dodgers.
Exactly.
So the Dodgers are the answer to everything?
Well, either baseball or the Dodgers.
Okay.
So is the
I
meaning.
sense some bias in
I
there.
think there's some bias in that. Well, maybe.
Just a little.
Okay. The Westminster Shorter Catechism, the first question in the what a catechism is, it's a way of instructing new converts to Christianity. And it's a series of questions. They're designed to elicit certain answers so that a person that has just become a Christian understands what it is that's happened and who they are and what they believe. And the first question in the Shorter Catechism, the Westminster Shorter Catechism, is, what is the chief end of man? That is, what is the purpose of a human being? And the answer is, man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever.
Or like you like to say.
Well, it wasn't I that came up with it. It was a small child who once commented that man's chief end is to glorify God and to annoy Him forever,
Yes.
which probably comes closer to the truth.
Yeah.
But that is the question. And people do wonder sometimes, why do I exist? What possible role do I play? One role that I play is I pick up the dog's
Dog poop.
dog's poop at night, put it in a bag, and this is my purpose in life, is to carry dog poop.
At least
as
it's
far-
full of bag.
At least as far as the dog is concerned, that seems to be my purpose.
Yeah.
That and giving him food and water when you forget.
Or when he eats or drinks it all when I'm not home.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I rarely forget. I fill it up every morning, and if I see it in the afternoon, I fill it up again.
Yes, so from our
I
pet's
don't neglect my
perspective,
dog.
our purpose is to meet their needs.
Right.
Which is similar to what our children's perspective is on our purpose as well.
I like Scott Adams' perspective on dogs and cats.
What is that?
He says that dogs, they try to connect with us and they try to feel what we're feeling. So dogs are empaths. Cats want us to connect with them, so they are sociopaths.
Yes. Well, they used to be worshipped as gods, and they've never forgotten that. Now, a simple answer for why am I here could be the one that Jesus gave when he was responding to a question that one of the religious leaders asked him. And that question was, what is the greatest commandment? And the greatest commandment, according to Jesus, was to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And that there's then a second that is like to the first one, which is to love your neighbor as yourself. And then he commented, the entire Bible hangs on those two commandments. So our purpose in that respect would be to love those that are around us. Of course, Paul then goes on and points out that primary way that really all the commandments come down to simply loving other people, because anything that, if we don't kill them, if we don't steal from them, if we don't lie to them, whatever, it is love fulfills all of those things because you don't do harm to your neighbor. And Jesus tells a couple parables that seem to suggest that it's primarily how we treat people that shows how we love God. He tells the story of the goats and the sheep. And the bottom line in that parable is that as you've done to the least of these, so have you done to me. That is, when he sends the goats away, he says, well, you didn't visit me when I was in prison, you didn't feed me when I was hungry, you didn't give me something to drink when I was thirsty. And they ask, well, when did we ever see you that way? He says, you've done to, or failed to do the least of these, so you failed to do that to me. And of course, later on, we see Jesus when he confronts Paul on the road to Damascus. He doesn't ask Paul, why are you persecuting Christians? He says, why are you persecuting me? Mm-hmm. And so there's a very close connection made between God and people of his creation. And so primarily the way we demonstrate love for God is how we treat one another. Mm-hmm. And you could argue then that that is perhaps the purpose for our existence, is to love other people.
Well, and since we're made in the image of God,
mm-hmm.
then loving his image, not idols, but loving his image, loving
yes.
other people, is loving God.
Right.
It's kind of like more like we're equals than.
Yeah. Well, you see that biblically. That is, we were told that we've been crucified with Christ. We're told that we're his friends. We're told that we're the bride of Christ. We're described as the New Jerusalem, the kingdom of God. We are, Jesus is referred to as our brother. And then we're told that we've been adopted into God's family. And of course, you go back to the very beginning, when God created human beings, it says that he created them in his image and his likeness. That is, he made us to be like him.
Right.
It is when people get upset about human beings playing God, that's kind of silly, because that's essentially the reason that we were made, is to play God. Because we're made to be like him.
Well, we were given the creation, and we were told to subdue it. So to basically, this is yours, take care of it, but use it as well. So when death came as a result of the fall, and so we want to fight against the fall, because that's not what we were created for. So things like extending life, saving people's lives, things like that, things that you would consider playing God.
Inventing air conditioning so we don't have to sweat.
I know, it's starting to finally cool off, but I'm like sweating behind my knees. I gotta keep my legs out so that I don't sweat behind my knees. Don't make any rude comments about my legs, please. So, well, not rude to me, but I mean, I'd be like, geez, because I saw that look on your face. So, but, yeah, it's pretty hot up here, but I'm also drinking coffee, so that doesn't help.
You mentioned that before.
Yes. Well, I have new people on now.
Oh,
so
in
my
case
friend
they hadn't
Kim
heard.
joined us, yes.
Okay. So we have purpose in the other people around us, the people we come in contact with, neighbors, coworkers, people that we meet for a moment in the store, whatever. One of the religious leaders made the disingenuous question to Jesus, well, who is my neighbor? Because he wanted to narrow who he had to be nice to. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to have to be nice to people that he didn't want to be nice to. And of course that triggered Jesus to give the story of the Good Samaritan. And the whole point of that was that everybody is your neighbor.
Right.
So get over yourself. Plus also in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus explains that it's very easy to be nice to the people that are nice to you. That is, even tax collectors and sinners, as you put it, do that. Mm-hmm. That is, the unpleasant people that you would never give 2 cents to, they're nice to other people like themselves who are nice to them. What we're called to do is to be nice to those who persecute us, to take advantage of us, who abuse us, and whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's what's incredibly difficult. Primarily as a consequence of the fact that we are broken now, as a consequence of the choice that Adam and Eve made in the garden. Because ideally, I've talked about this before mentioning Dietrich Bonhoeffer's book, Ethics. He points out in that book that part of the evidence of the fall is the fact that we focus most of our attention on being good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
That is this thing bad or is this thing good? And that's something that comes about as a consequence of the fact that Adam and Eve made a poor choice.
Right.
It was not originally intended to be that way at all. The world wasn't supposed to work that way. Instead, the world was supposed to be focused, that is, each individual in the world was supposed to be focused on making other people happy.
Mm-hmm.
It is focused on loving others. Because if everybody is doing that, then everybody is completely fulfilled and gets everything they could ever imagine they want.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we live in a world where we're afraid that, we know that we love ourselves, but we're afraid nobody else does.
Right. Well, and we're also tied into this idea that we have to make people be good. I was listening to, I think it was on one of my podcasts, there was a rabbi on there that was being interviewed, and he said that his philosophy is that God wants us to be good. And I had a significant argument with that, but understanding he's a rabbi and comes from the tradition of the Jewish law.
Right.
And
the whole focus on that is
is doing the right thing, not eating cheeseburgers. You can eat cheese, you can eat meat, but not together. Things like that. But like keeping the kosher laws and the way they dress. Well, depending on which.
One has to keep in
level
mind that even in
Judaism.
Judaism, when Jesus made his statement
Mm-hmm.
about what is the greatest commandment, that comes straight out of Judaism.
Right.
That is, they recognize that. The problem is, and this is a problem for anyone, is that we will get focused on boundary issues.
Right.
Because those are easier.
Mm-hmm.
That is, keeping milk and meat products separate is a relatively easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a fundamentalist and have rules against going to movies, then it's a pretty easy thing to do. But loving your neighbor as yourself is very fuzzy and hard to wrap your hands around.
Yeah.
And human beings like to have little boxes they can check off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really not the way the Bible is set up, and that's not the way we're supposed to function. I think in Judaism, if they pay close attention to what Bonhoeffer noticed in Genesis chapter 1, when God said, or is it chapter 3? Anyway, when he tells them to not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Right.
What you have to notice about that, it's not the tree of the knowledge of evil,
Mm-hmm.
it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because both things were concepts we were not supposed to understand or know in any regard whatsoever. And so the fact that we know good is as much a mistake for us as it is for us to know about evil.
Right. And see, and that's like the constant struggle, and that's kind of where I was going with that. One of the things that I brought up at Weight Watchers, I go to Weight Watchers on Saturday mornings, and we talk about, well, I had a good week or a bad week. Like, a bad week is eating cupcakes for every meal.
That sounds like a great week.
A good week is eating carrots all week long. No, eating on program.
Okay.
But like things for me that I know are issues, like I feel better and I'm healthier if I eat higher protein and higher fiber foods. So when I do that, I feel better. But when I indulge myself and eat a lot of simple carbs and things like that, like I do better on brown rice than on white rice. I'm better with whole grain bread than with white bread. Oh, I love white bread. Wonder Bread is like my jam. But anyway, so those simple carbs really cause me to gain weight really quickly. And so for me, I have to try to avoid those things. Of course, those are the things that I love the most. And but it's easy to say, well, I ate a lot of bad food this week. Well, food is kind of amoral. It's not good or bad, but we categorize it partly for weight loss or for health reasons. And So now it was interesting because I was listening to a video that Mayim Bialik did. I think she has like a webcast or something that she does. She's a little wacky. She's kind of one of those crunchy granola moms, and I'm not into that. But she talked about her kids are preteens, well, they're tweens right now. And so she's really struggling with them with their food choices. Because when they're babies and they're toddlers, you can control their food choices more. So when they were little, she taught them that there were growing foods and there were fun foods. And so sometimes just renaming something can make it better. Now, I don't want to eat growing food because I don't want to grow anymore. That's what simple carbs are for me. They're growing food. And my fun food is also growing food. So I need different terms.
What does she mean by fun food?
Okay, that's something you have occasionally. Like if
okay.
you go to a birthday party, you may have cake or cupcakes. That's a fun food. But we're not going to have cake for breakfast in the morning because that's not a growing food. I know. Dad is great. He's giving us chocolate cake. Anyway, sometimes just renaming it, like the way we name things shows that fallen nature.
Yes.
You know, like my dog pees in the house, you're a bad dog. Well, he's not a bad dog, he just peed in the house. I love him no matter what.
And
he doesn't love him, but
from his perspective, he doesn't understand
right.
the issue.
He had to go and he lifted his leg and stuff came out.
And he feels better.
Yeah, and he feels way better for it. But, and it's my fault for not taking him out or letting him out of the house. But anyway, it's super easy to focus on that good versus bad. Okay, so I also wanted to contribute this as well.
Yes.
My mother and I were talking about this. My mother and I traveled together this summer. She's been healed from ovarian cancer. And so we went on a remission trip. And so we went to Vegas for a while. And we were just in the hotel and we were talking about rules that we had to live by, like when I was younger. And one of them was going to the movie theater, and she re-explained to me, I already knew this was the reason, but she said the reason why that you couldn't go to the movie theater, actually my dad did get in trouble because somebody in our church found out that we went to see The Hiding Place at the movie theater. Mm-hmm. We had gone to Kingman, we had gone to a town 45 miles away so people wouldn't see us there.
Will find you out.
That's right, be sure that your sin shall find you out. Well, and I didn't know this, they found out that we had gone to see The Hiding Place, regardless of where we were.
Yes.
And they were really angry with my dad, and my dad was the pastor of the church. So anyway, he was kind of in duck soup for that. But my mom was re-explaining to me that supporting a movie theater also supports the X-rated movies they put out. Well, I have yet to see a movie that shows Bambi to also show Deep Throat. So that I told her, I said, well, that's first of all ignorance of how the movie industry works. The more people that will see G-rated movies, the more G-rated movies come out. So you actually influence the industry by spending your money there. Christians actually were not being positive influences by not going to the movie theater. So really loving your neighbor can be going to the movies because you support movies that you like and that are more wholesome than you don't have as many, movie companies don't really like putting out R-rated movies.
Because that cuts a lot of their audience out.
It
They don't make
does.
as much money.
Yeah, and I told my mom, I said, if you look, now PG is kind of equivalent to G now, because with the PG-13, PG has moved dangerously close to G. It's really hard to tell the difference.
Well, the reason that happened is because of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Came out as a PG movie. People were freaked out by certain scenes in it, and so a consequence of that is they created the PG-13.
Right.
Although PG, I thought was the stupidest thing at the time because PG, by its nature, meant that it wasn't something people under 13 should go to.
Right. It was parental guidance. So, well, see, and at school,
so PG-13 is a nonsensical.
At school, parents have to give permission for their child to see PG movies, like on a case-by-case basis. So.
Frankly,
it's
I think the
hard.
whole rating system is stupid. We shouldn't even have such.
Well, now
don't do that
with IMDb, they have parental advisories on there, and it will tell you how many times you say the H word, how many times you say the S word. Nudity, what kind of nudity is that? You're going to see a belly button. Okay, that's not nudity, you know. And so, but anyway,
silly.
Right, but it's really hard being a teacher because we can only show G movies unless we get special permission. So it's really hard because a movie that kids want to see, and you're like, oh, I'm sure that's G. And then you look and it's PG. Sorry, guys, we can't watch it. And like, what? Why not? I'm allowed to see it. Of course, their parents let them play Fortnite too, so that's not saying much. But anyway, my point is that it was ignorance of how the movie industry works, and it was just a way of controlling people. So if you're a good Christian, you don't go to a movie theater. If you're a bad Christian, you'll go see The Hiding Place, which incidentally was a Christian movie. It was about Corrie ten Boom and her experience with the Nazis and that. So it was really a lot of foolishness.
Well, what happens with something like that, and you see that reflected, like mentioned the religious leader asking Jesus, who is my neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
The essence of legalism is trying to redefine things in such a way that you can do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so for those Christians that were opposed to going to the movies, they very narrowly defined what movie meant.
Film.
And so a movie was something that you went into a theater with a bunch of people you don't know and sat down in the dark and watched this big screen. But if you show it in the church or you watch it on TV, well, that's not a movie.
Right, those are films.
Those are films.
Yes.
Those are fine.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Yeah.
Or
Well-
the college we graduated from, it used to be that you couldn't play cards. Well, cards was defined as the traditional 52 deck
Playing
card,
cards. with
playing
the-
cards,
Right, diamonds. aces.
diamonds, aces, and so on. But if you used rook cards,
Yeah.
then that was fine. Or Uno cards, that was fine. It's just
And-
this one class of cards
Right,
that were
because
bad.
those cards are going to cause you to gamble. Guess what? They gambled in the student lounge with rook cards.
Uh-huh.
They
Everything works.
played poker with rook cards.
It works fine.
And nobody knew because the adults would come through and, oh, look, they're playing rook and eating peanuts. No, they were gambling the peanuts or the M&Ms or whatever they were. So, yeah.
Legalism is a wonderful thing.
Yes, it is. But it can be tricky though. Now, see, our rule was we could go to the movies when we were out of town, but we couldn't tell anybody. There were certain people we couldn't tell. We couldn't tell the people in our church, and we couldn't tell our grandparents.
Yes.
And because that
They'd
would,
all stroke out.
yeah, I know, right? So, but yeah,
I don't know.
I just don't go to the
It's
movies
puzzling.
now because it's too expensive.
Yeah. Well, we've got Netflix now
Yeah,
and Amazon Prime
yeah.
and
CBS All Access, watching Star Trek Discovery. Highly recommend Star Trek Discovery.
Although you have to pay extra to see it.
Yeah.
But it's very well done. They're spending $8.5 million per episode. They're doing a good job.
Now, I will say though, at least in the early days of the movie channels, when you paid, like for HBO or Cinemax, you were also paying for the dirty movies too. So actually, I would say the legalists have more of an argument with having HBO or Cinemax in your house versus going to the movie theater, because now they've split them out, I think, like there's Cinemax at night, or used to be. I don't even know. We don't even watch our movie channels. We need to pare down our
probably.
package that we have.
Yeah, with streaming services, we don't need it so much anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
But
anyway, life, the universe, and everything. Finding purpose in life.
back on the topic.
Well, everything. It's life, the universe, and everything.
That's right. And we pretty much covered everything, so let's go back to life in the universe.
But, finding purpose in life, and that can be very difficult for people sometimes, particularly if they have health issues or of some sort, or if they're disabled. One of the difficulties that people face when they retire, or if they are unemployed or for some reason, they have difficulty finding a reason to get up in the morning. It can be very abstract to say that our purpose is to love others. Mm-hmm. Well, what if you live all by yourself and you have a cat? I mean, or don't even have that because the apartment won't let you have animals. It becomes more difficult to find purpose.
Well, one thing that I do, and this isn't because I'm all great and everything, but one thing that it's actually God led me to do it. We live near the Highway Patrol satellite office in Lancaster. And used to be, because of the lights now, I take a different way to work. But whenever I would drive by the highway patrol office, I would pray for the patrolmen in there. One, I'd pray for them to be fair and that they would also be safe. And I do that, like today I was driving and I saw a sheriff's car going the opposite way, and I prayed for him that he would be fair in his dealings with the public and that he would be kept safe. And so that's one way. I mean, you can just pray for people. On the news, you know, when you see like people being attacked, you can, like I'm thinking about this Antifa thing, and that guy, that Asian guy that was attacked by them, he was injured pretty badly. And so whenever you see that video of him or you hear a discussion about it, you can pray for him that he'll be healed because he's suffering brain damage from that attack. And also pray for those Antifa people, that they won't be so hateful and so angry towards others.
Yeah, well, avoiding the violence would be nice.
Yeah, so I mean, you can protest if you want, that's fine, but the being you know, making the cement milkshakes and attacking people, and I mean, that guy, he was beat up pretty badly. And so, but praying for people like that. Well, and even praying for our leaders. You know, I know Donald Trump is very controversial. And pray for him. If you hate him, pray for him. If you love him, pray for him. I mean, you can pray for anybody, and that's one way. There's a woman in our church that she prays for everybody in our church. She prays for the leaders of our country and our county and everything else. She is really a prayer warrior, and there's not a lot that she can do because she has some physical limitations and some health, you know, health-wise and that. And so she can't help somebody move to another house, or she can't necessarily like volunteer somewhere. She doesn't have to work. So her husband makes enough money, she doesn't have to work. But she loves people by praying for them. So it's something that simple. Carrying water bottles in your car, and when you see a homeless person begging for money, hand them a water bottle. You know, I mean, that's a way of loving other people. When I see someone panhandling like near a store, or like if I'm walking, I will look at the person. I'm not going to give them money. I always tell them I don't have any cash, because normally I don't. But I don't give them money because often they'll spend it, not necessarily on drugs or beer, that's not my argument, but they will usually spend it, like for example, if we have somebody panhandles out front of the post office. If you give him money, he may go buy stamps. What does he need stamps for? Probably nothing, but it's a way to spend money. They just like to unload their money.
Brittany, that is our youngest daughter, because of her mental illness, and it's common with people with this particular mental illness is how they spend their money, and that's exactly right. They will spend it on the first thing they see. Right. And so if they're outside a store that has candy, they will spend all the money on the candy. If they're outside, like you said, the post office, suddenly they buy a bunch of stamps.
I mean, it's 106 degrees today. What did she buy yesterday with her allowance? Blankets. Okay, she needs blankets like she needs a hole in the head.
Well, we went, she had me take her to Ross. And so I'm assuming that she's going to buy herself more clothes. The child has more clothes than Imelda Marcos has shoes.
Hat, I think she's dead now.
Hat, shoes. That's an old reference for those that are young. Look it up on Wikipedia. But yeah, she'll just spend her money. And so she was looking through clothes for a long time while I was sitting there. I found a chair that I could sit in.
Oh, okay.
And she went off.
You found a dad chair.
And so I sat, and she went off and did her thing. She'd bring me things every so often, so I make sure that she's staying within her amount that she's allowed to spend. And she went and tried them on. They didn't all fit. She had one thing left that she liked, and so she went off again. Next thing I know, she comes back with a pillow and two blankets, throw blankets, and I don't know, some plastic thing. I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to what it was. But anyway, that's what she got instead of clothes, except for the one piece of clothing, which is fine. But again, she is opportunistic in her spending. And that's the difficulty you'll face with giving money to homeless people, is that a sizable percentage of them, I think it's about a third, is the estimates I've heard, are people that have undiagnosed or untreated mental illness. And so what will happen is exactly that. They will spend the money on whatever they happen to be closest to. And it doesn't necessarily, and the problem is it's not helping them then. That is what they need, is the food, the water. A blanket might be good. Things like socks.
Socks. Carry socks in your car, and they could just be men's tube socks, just generic socks, because anybody can use them. They can use them as gloves, they can use them on their feet. Even in the summertime, it protects their feet from the wind and the sun and all that. Socks, water bottles, and like a granola bar or something that won't die and like won't go stale in your car, but or melt in this weather. But granola bars might melt. But anyway, something with a higher fiber content, so it fills them up better. Something a little bit more nutritious and a little sweet too, because that kind of knocks out the hunger a little bit. But if you just doing that is a way to show people that you love them. But what I was going to say was, when I walk by these people that are panhandling, I look at them and I tell them, I'm sorry, I don't have any money. Because one of the complaints that homeless people have, or that panhandlers have, is that people act like we're not there. They don't look at us.
Yeah.
And so now if I'm in my car and I'm like at an intersection, I generally won't look because I don't want them to come up to my window. But, because I'm not going to give money. But, and I don't have water bottles in my car. But anyway, but just thinking,
Acknowledging them as another human being
Yes.
and treating them with respect is an
Right.
important aspect of loving other people. This is one of the things that's disturbing, like with a lot of the social media, is that people will disagree with someone else, and rather than treating them with respect or as another human being, they treat them as if they're a demon. You don't agree with me on this issue, so you are not only wrong, you're evil, you're vile, you should be dead. And that's a very dangerous place to go.
yeah,
I don't understand it, quite frankly.
yeah,
And yeah, because again, loving other people would mean that you treat them with respect.
If you don't agree with them, keep scrolling.
Yeah, you don't have to respond to someone just because they said something that is stupid.
Or that you disagree
or
with.
that you disagree with. I will struggle with myself a lot. When people say the equivalent of saying the sky is green with orange polka dots, it's hard to resist the urge to correct that. Just like for grammar Nazi, it's hard to not to correct someone who misuses English.
Actually, I'm moving away from that term grammar Nazi now, because Nazi's being applied to a lot of people in a really
That's
bad way.
true.
It was funny when I first started using
Yeah,
it.
it's
Now,
not so funny
people,
anymore.
yeah,
People use the term far too often.
yeah,
That is,
and to apply to people that are not.
yes, that is, it's hyperbole, and it's,
Oopsie.
again, it's just not nice, and I would argue that it's, again, not showing respect or love for other people.
Right.
Uh,
So
how
I
we
use grammar
have-
police.
That
Even
works.
though
Yeah.
there are people that hate the police, but still, you can hate me just because you can hate me because you have bad grammar. Sorry.
So yeah,
Right.
love online particularly seems to be an endangered species.
Yeah.
People are turning who they hate into their reason for existing sometimes, it seems like, and that's very disturbing.
And young people fall into this trap so much easier and so much more quickly. And people are saying, "What's happening to our young people
They're
today?"
just people.
They're just people, and
the
they're
way we
people
were when
without
we were young,
experience,
too.
right? They're people without good people experience. So as you get older, you're like, "Yeah, I've seen worse.
Yeah.
I'll just let it go."
Well, that's part of the problem too with, we've talked about this before, my relatively low opinion of journalistic ability. People lack an understanding of history in any kind of depth whatsoever. Most people's knowledge of history seems to be derived from what they see in some movies and TV shows that are not necessarily completely factual.
Right.
Inglourious Bastards was a fun movie to watch, but it does not give you a good picture of what Nazi Germany was like, and it's not accurate history either.
Right.
It's not the way Hitler ended.
Okay, so this is interesting. Speaking
Yes.
about history, so I'm going through the stuff in my classroom. Sorry, I'm leaning back because I'm sweating. But so I was going through a bunch of things in my classroom. So I just moved into a new classroom. I'm trying to get everything organized, and there were a couple of old albums, vinyls that I had scavenged, I think, off the free table in the lounge, and one of them was called, or is called, The Incredible Year 1968. And it's narrated by Charles Kuralt, and I love Charles Kuralt. He was the host of CBS Sunday Morning, which I essentially have watched since I was a teenager, since it started. And with the exception of when I didn't have a TV, like when I was living in the dorms in college, and then when I had to work on Sundays back in the day, and different things like that, or like when we used to have early service, I wasn't there to watch it. And
This
now
was
we have
before
TiVo. So,
TiVo.
yes, and I can watch it later on Sunday. But anyway, so, but this is a show I've watched for a long time, and Charles Kuralt was the first host of it. And I really, really liked Charles Kuralt, and he retired and then he passed away. But anyway, and I'm enjoying Jane Pauley on it now. But anyway, so he narrated this. Well, it was interesting because it's actual like news clips and stuff put on this album, and it talks about the year 1968. So that was the year that Robert Kennedy was assassinated, Martin Luther King was assassinated.
There were a lot of bad things.
And there
in
was
that year.
something in there, and I didn't catch what there was a lot of unrest that year, kind of like what we're going through now.
Well, that was also the year of the primaries and the election between Hubert Humphrey
That's
and
right.
Richard Nixon.
Yes,
and you had riots at the Democratic National Convention. It was just a horrendous mess.
And somebody in a speech said we have to like go up against their Gestapo-like tactics. I was like, wow. So this has been rehashed many, many times.
Well,
I feel like we're living in the 1960s, early 70s all over again.
No, it's just because
It's
this
just
is
happening online.
This is the way people are.
Right.
And to throw out the term Nazi or Gestapo is a common tactic that has been used since World War II against political opponents on both sides
Because
ever
you
after.
you want to get people's hackles up.
Yes, and so you say this bad term for these people so that you understand that these are bad people and you need to hate them, which of course is not, again, it counters what our purpose is, which is to love others. And it's also not accurate at all, and it cheapens the term.
Right.
That's the other problem with it. That is, when you start using these terms that refer to very specific historical situations where people were vile beyond what you can understand in today's world for the most part, it's just not, it's not accurate, it's not healthy, and it's a dehumanizing approach. That is, you're dehumanizing your opponents, making them
Well, and it's really when you don't have a good argument.
And yeah, that's the other
It's
problem
easier
too.
for me to call you Hitler than it is to tell you all the reasons that I
Why
disagree
that you
with
disagree
you.
with me.
Because I'm not smart enough, I just happen to know the word Hitler, apparently. But, well, and like to say, I'm going to use this very specific example. I don't want to get into a political discussion. But like when AOC used the term concentration camp, and then she used the very narrow definition of it's an encampment of a concentration of people. She knew full well what she meant and why she used it. She used it to get airtime and
Well, again, it was
as a political weapon.
It's
She
calling
did
your
not
opponents,
mean it in that
Oh
in
no,
that
you're
term.
calling your opponent a Nazi is what
Right.
you're doing. And again, you're dehumanizing your opponent, and
Right.
it's just a very hazardous place to be because hate really is not, I mean, to pull in a Star Wars thing, what did Yoda say about hate?
All right, just say it because I'm not
I'm
gonna.
trying-
I'm not.
I was hoping you would remember the quote because it just went out of my head.
Oh,
But anyway,
well, here I can Google it.
Yeah, Google it.
Okay, what did Yoda say about hate?
Yeah, but anyway, hate is not a good place to go. And again, the purpose of human beings is to love one another and to love those who are hard to love.
Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. This is the other thing too. Like if people will, like for example, if somebody posts, oh, this is my new dress, and then I say to them, well, I don't really like the dress. Now I'm a hater. That's the other thing too. It's being used far too widely. A hater is someone who's willing to kill you because they don't like the dress.
Right.
And so that's,
And again, but the problem is that people will use the term and will be willing to kill someone, or at least express the concept of killing someone for rather trivial reasons. And that's a bit scary. In the New Testament, we're told in Romans chapter 5, Paul makes the comment that God showed his love for us in sending his son to die for our sins while we were God's enemies. And so, if we want to follow that example, and I mean, in the New Testament, Jesus himself says, love your enemies, love those who persecute you, love those who harm you. It's not an easy thing to do by any means, but that is the goal. And the amount of hate that is spewed out online, social media, in the news, from all sides is deeply disturbing. The violence that is engendered, the violence that you see portrayed, I mean, it's all very, very disturbing. And again, counter to what our purpose is as human beings, which is to love one another. Jesus makes the comment that, if you love your enemy, you heap coals of fire on their head. Coals of fire are not a positive thing. Again, the best way to overcome those you disagree with, those that you would naturally hate, is to be kind to them, to show them love, which is not natural and is not easy, but that is what we are called upon to do. But it's not very human for us to act that way, to act in a loving manner. It's much easier.
Well, if that was our natural bend, Jesus wouldn't have had to have said it.
Right. Yeah. Most of
because really the teachings of the Bible teach you how
to not be as human as you otherwise would be.
Exactly.
And as most of Christianity runs counter to human nature.
Right. How to react in a situation.
And the consequence of that is, most Christians, just because they're still human, tend not to always act the way they ideally should either.
Right.
Which, of course, then raises legitimate criticism against Christianity, which is unfortunate. Jesus said that people will know that you are my disciples by your love for one another. Unfortunately, that tends not to be the case. Most people recognize someone as being a Christian because they are saying mean things to somebody else.
Well, it's
Putting
funny because
somebody
this
down for the way they
actually,
behave.
I can't remember exactly what the person said, but somebody said it. We're having a meeting at work, and it was a committee of us that were meeting, and somebody made a comment about Christians being judgy, or I don't know, anyways, about a very specific situation. I said, well, because everybody knows the song. I go, well, they'll know we are Christians by how we judge each other. And they knew first of all that I was a Christian, and second of all that I was kidding.
Yes.
But that's really how the song should be sung, because that's really what happens.
The world that is because you are judgmental, because you're hypocritical, because you know.
What's unfortunate is
Jesus came, and when he came, the people he criticized most heavily were the religious establishment. If he were to come back today, the people he criticized most heavily are.
I'm going to criticize you heavenly.
Yes, are the religious establishment.
Yeah.
The church would be heavily criticized by Jesus. That is, he came as a Jewish man living in a Jewish society, participating in Judaism, and it was the leaders of his own faith that he most heavily criticized. And so if he were to come back today, it's us who would be most criticized. And justifiably. That's the thing. That is, because we are human, we tend to mess up an awful lot of the time, most of the time. I was just reading today about some large church, I think it's back east someplace, that's being sued because they didn't handle a sexual predator properly. And, they are justifiably getting themselves in trouble. And it's sad.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be that way. Unfortunately, we remain human even though we claim to be Christians.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to love other people. And love really is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. And so many of us feel our lives have no purpose because we're so bad at it. When you first fall in love with someone, suddenly life, the universe, and everything is wonderful. Everything is perfect. Nothing could possibly be wrong. No matter what else is going on in your life, if you are in love with someone, suddenly it doesn't seem so bad. Everything seems fine. Unfortunately, that kind of love only lasts about 3 years at most. That is, the in-love experience is weird hormonal mishmash of chemicals, and doesn't endure.
I don't have a weird mishmash of chemicals for you anymore. And you for me. We've been together too long.
That's right. And see, this is the problem that people say, "Well, I fell out of love with them." No, it's just you reached the 3-year max, and you're. I mean, if you think love is just that chemical high, then you're making a mistake too.
And people really get addicted to that.
Oh yeah, well, it feels really good.
It's like, oh, you're in a it's that new relationship high.
Yeah, that's exactly
and
what it
everything's
is.
new and wonderful. You can't keep your hands off each other. But the real test is staying together over time when bad things happen.
Yes.
Did we freeze up? We did.
Did we?
It looks like we froze.
Yeah, it does.
Did something happen? Well, I noticed that a message came up on your phone, but
Okay, well,
I don't know if there's any sound.
I don't either. Well, let us pause and reset if you can hear us.